Welcome all of you to my channel. Today we are going to talk about a comedy, drama, fantasy, romance movie, PS, released in the year 2004. And I hope you will definitely like the story of this movie. The story begins with Louise, who is a very beautiful 49-year-old woman, and she works in the admissions office at Columbia University of the Arts. Louise meets a man named Peter who is actually her ex-husband. And even after the divorce, Louise came to meet Peter because they are still very good friends of each other. The next day, after getting tired from office work, Louise calls her friend Mia. Mia tells Louise that her rich husband has been ignoring her for a while now, and maybe now she is thinking about having a private secret affair with someone else. Mia also tells Louise that I am not like you. Now after hearing this, Louise started feeling very lonely. Then he gets an admission letter in the office, on which was written F. Scott. Actually, Louise liked a boy in her high school very much, and his name was also F. Scott, but he died in an accident 20 years ago. Now after opening that letter, Louise calls that boy F. Scott, and I tell him that I am talking to the admissions office of Columbia University. I will interview you on Monday, so please bring your certificates and other documents with you. Actually, this interview was just an excuse. Actually, Louise wanted to meet F. Scott. Now after all this, Louise goes to his mother's house to meet her. And at her home she looks at the gift given to her at school by Louis F. Scott. Louise also meets her brother Sammy. It turns out that Louise doesn't like her brother at all. Now on Monday, Louise waits for F. Scott in her office, but he is a little late in arriving there. Meanwhile, Louise calls her friend Mia and asks her about Scott's handwriting at school, because Mia was very close to Scott in school, and he was the one who took Scott away from Louis. Now after some time, Scott reaches Louis's office. And Louis is quite surprised to see that, because he looked and talked exactly like the old Scott. After the interview is over, Louise tells Scott, let's go out somewhere, and there I will also explain to you the rest of the rules of this university. When Scott agrees, Louise takes him to his house. There Scott tells Louis that I want to draw your picture, and while talking sweetly like this he started touching Louis. Now both of them were very close to each other, and after some time they both bang to each other. Louise enjoys this moment to the fullest, because her loneliness is now going away. After which Scott calls his mother and tells her that my interview is over and I will return home soon. Louise tells Scott, promise me you'll meet me again tomorrow night. Scott leaves and Louis goes back to his office. Now from that moment onwards, Louis started becoming much happier, so Mia started suspecting him. She thinks maybe Louise is dating some guy. Now that same evening, Louis and Peter meet and spend time together having some drinks. Peter drunkenly tells Louis that he has a disease. He has some strange disease, and in order to cure it, he comes close to different girls. And he has been doing all this ever since they both got married. Now after hearing this, Louis becomes very sad, and throws Peter out of her house. That same night, Scott visits Louise at her home, and he sees that Louis is very sad. When Scott asks, Louise tells him everything about herself and her ex-husband. Scott tells Louis that Peter must be lying to you, because he might have found out that you are dating some other boy, and so that you do not go away from him, he wants to bring you back to him. Now both Louis and Scott go to a hotel to eat, and after returning home from there, Louise tells Scott about her boyfriend from school. But even after telling all this, Louise does not tell Scott the name of her boyfriend, after which a romantic war starts again between them. The next morning, when Louise wakes up, Scott is gone, after which Louise goes to her mother and tells her that Peter has betrayed her. Louise also talks about this to her brother Sammy, because he is a very good friend of Peter. But Sammy tells Louis that I cannot help you in all this. You will have to handle this situation yourself. After which Louis goes to the hotel room where Mia was staying. Mia asks Louis, why didn't you tell me about F. Scott? Louise says it is not what you are thinking. That's not F. Scott. Mia says I think F. Scott is resurrected, because his voice was exactly like F. Scott. Then when Louis asks, Mia tells that when I called your house, Scott picked up the call, and that's when I first talked to Scott. For a moment, I thought maybe Scott was alive again. Mia also tells Louis that I have met F. Scott, and he was asking me a lot of questions about you. Louis asks Mia, did you tell him anything about F. Scott from school? Mia says no, I did not tell him anything about Scott from school. Now here Louis was feeling very jealous of Mia, and there was some anger too because Mia had taken Scott away from him earlier too. And now she is doing the same thing again. Now Louise leaves from there in anger and tells Mia that I will tell the whole truth to Scott. Flash forward to see Scott already waiting for Louis. When Louis asks, Scott says that Mia called me and told me that you want to talk to me about some important issue. Now here Louise tells Scott all about Scott at school. She tells me that you look just like her, to the extent that your actions are exactly like Scott at school. Now here Scott asks Louis, do you think I am the same boy who came back to life after dying? Louis gets very angry at Scott's words, and then Scott also leaves from there. Returning back home, Louise finds Peter waiting for her to come home. When Louis asks, Peter tells him that whatever he said that day was a lie. And I told all these lies so that I could bring you to me. This means that whatever Scott had told Louis about Peter at that time was true. Now the next morning when Scott comes to Louis' house, he sees that Peter is there. Scott Louis was very angry after seeing Peter there. Seeing all this, Peter could not understand anything, so Louis asks Peter to leave from there. After which Scott tells Louis that I could not sleep the whole night because of you. And here you are, comfortably having fun with your first husband. To this of Scott, Louise says, it is not what you are thinking. Nothing happened between us last night. Scott says, so you want to break up with me. And I also knew that you do not love me but the shadow of your old boyfriend that you see in me. My name is not F. Scott but Francis Scott, but everyone fondly calls me F. Scott. Another thing is that last night I went to Mia because I was upset with you. Now after hearing this, Louis goes to meet Mia in anger. Because he felt that like before, this time too Mia was snatching Scott from him. And it must have been he who provoked Scott by saying something strange against him. Now Louis tells Mia what happened between you two last night. Mia tells everything truthfully, and she also advises Louis that he should enjoy his life instead of complicating it. Now after that moment, Louise completely changes and starts being very happy. Louise tells Peter that they can never be one, and you must accept it now. After which, Louis gives Scott his joining letter and tells him that our university has given this to you in view of your work. Then at the end they both kiss each other and let's continue this relationship further. And with this happy scene the story ends. So if you liked the story even a little bit, then definitely like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for sticking to the story till the end.